Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend. I'm the Campaign Marketing Manager here with eLearning Brothers. Today we're going to be talking about the ROI from VR. This is going to be very exciting. We've had a lot of people come and join today, so it must be a hot topic. This session will be recorded. We will send a copy of it out to everybody who has registered, so you can be looking for that in your email. Later today, we'll also be posting this on our blog, so you can share it around through your email, or you can pass it on by going to blog.elearningbrothers.com and you can share it there. If you have questions during this webinar or comments or anything like that, please use the questions panel. That is one of the options in your GoToWebinar control panel. You can find it there and we'll get to as many of your questions as we can. And if we're not able to answer some of your questions live, we will reach out to you offline. We'll just really want to make sure that you're getting the information that you're looking for. All right, well, we have a fantastic guest with us today. We've got John Blackmon, eLearning Brothers Chief Technology Officer, here with us. Thank you for joining us, John. We're very excited to hear what you have to say. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass the screen over to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great,
Andrew.
I see it.
All right, great. So hello and welcome to Prove It, Return on Investment from Virtual Reality. One second. My name is John Blackmon, and I'll be your presenter today. I'm the, as Andrew mentioned, I'm the CTO of eLearning Brothers, and I'm also the original creator of both Lectora and Scenario VR. So you may be familiar with some of the things I've done. So let's dive right in. First, we're going to talk about immersive training and why it's important. Immersive training has many benefits over traditional training. Really, to start with, you definitely have 100% of a student's attention when they're in VR. This guy is not checking a text message or looking at Instagram right now. He's definitely completely involved when in that headset. And even when you're using an interactive 360 web experience, you're still highly involved with the immersion, so you're more likely not to be going off and doing other things. Retention rate is another big benefit. We've all heard of the forgetting curve. Now, with traditional learning, after a week, you remember about 20% or less of what you've learned. So, unfortunately, as I'm going through and giving this presentation, you're only going to remember about 20% of it next week. Let's hope it's the right 20%. Immersive learning is different. There was a study done recently down here at the Miami Children's Health System in which the retention level a year after VR training session can be as much as 80% compared to 20% retention a week after with traditional training. So you say, why is that? Why is it so different? I mean, a massive difference. Well, you can think of it like the difference between driving a car to your destination or being a passenger on that same trip. When you're actively driving, you're immersed in the experience and you generally remember how to get there. This is because when you're actively involved, your brain stores that information differently. You may not remember the street names or all of the details, but you can generally get back in that car and get to where you need to go. If you're a passenger, you're lucky to remember much about the trip at all. Your experience is entirely passive, and passive memory is kept in a different area inside your brain. Engagement rate is also a huge part of the experience. Interactive 360 and VR are very sticky experiences, meaning your users will want to work with your content. So imagine that, having your students actually wanting to take your content. Sounds like a good thing to me and something we all should experience more often. And probably most importantly, VR gives you the freedom to fail. One of the taglines we use with Scenario VR is that mistakes made in virtual reality are mistakes not made in reality. Your user can freely turn that switch or set the wrong temperature, and they won't cause an entire day's worth of production to be lost. The best way to learn something is to fail first and then get it right. And VR allows you to do that without suffering the consequences. So immersive learning sounds great. Heck, I'm sold on it. But anytime you want to try to bring something new in, you're always going to want to have to cost justify it. I mean, you may be able to easily show that the methodology is better, but you really need to show that in the long run, it won't cost you money, it will actually save you money. And trust me, it's always easier to get your manager's approval to save money than it is to get them to approve spending money. At least that's been my experience in the past. So today we're going to look at 3 clients from 3 very different business categories, all with different learning objectives. First, there'll be Fendi, who wanted training for health, safety, and preventing theft in their stores, which was proving to be a big issue for them. Then CIS CRP, who run live conferences to increase public clinical research literacy, and Vanderbilt University, who, among many other things, trains nursing students on how to use ultrasound equipment. What they all have in common, though, is that they used immersive learning to achieve their goals. So we're going to start with Fendi. Some of you may be familiar with Fendi, and some of you who are potentially as fashion challenged as I am might not be, but they are an almost 100-year-old luxury fashion brand based in Italy, with about 280 stores worldwide across 32 countries. Fendi wanted to deploy a mobile health and safety and security training program for its front of house staff. So that's basically everyone in the retail stores. We had a long list of topics, 9 topics actually in total, many of which would be the things you'd think of in retail: fire safety, first aid, theft, other things as well. But theft, however, in this case really stands out because of the high retail value of Fendi's line of products. Any reduction in theft could have a great impact on the bottom line for the company. So given the fact that they are a large multinational retailer, it presents some pretty big challenges with this kind of training. Their audience is around 1,800 customer-facing staff in 280 stores across 32 languages, 32 countries, speaking 11 different languages. They ended up hiring a company called Video Interact in London to create the course. You may be familiar with Video Interact's work from seeing them in the public area of Scenario VR. If you actually just go to the public area and click on Video Interact, you'll be able to see a lot of their work. They have a showcase of solutions they've created for their customers. Mobile first was chosen so the staff could take the courses easily, wherever they were. And Video Interact chose to heavily use video as a means to engage the learners. Testing was built right into the flow of the content, such that users didn't feel that passively watch, then take a test kind of flow that we're accustomed to. Learners just observed and then interacted with 360 video. They provided a way to test the user without making them feel like they were even taking a test. They were just getting through the material. All this was new for Fendi, and it took great foresight on their part to see how it can improve their training process when moving forward. So how did they do it? So Video Interact went to a Fendi location in London. They attended Fendi's in-person security training, and then they hired a cast and began shooting for the scenarios. Filming was done over 6 days, all in the evening after the stores were closed. They ended up capturing around 25 hours of raw footage that needed to be edited down. Now that they had that raw footage, they needed to develop the course. They used Lectora Online to develop the traditional parts of the content, such as the framework and all of that, and they used Scenario VR for all the interactive 360. The deployment to the user base was done through Moodle. So the course was really designed so the learners could not even progress until their natural actions indicated understanding the topic. So they would have to do things like clicking on and correctly identifying the risks. They were dotted around the store, so they'd look around in a 360 environment. This made learning actually simple. They removed the barriers, they got rid of that whole testing feel. People didn't feel like they were being tested, but yet their understanding was being tracked as they went. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Here. All right. So this is the Fendi. This is a 360 portion of it. Now remember, this was taken on mobile, so you would have it on their mobile device, but it could have been taken on the web as well, or inside of a VR headset. So in this case, we have some background music playing that you're not hearing, but we're going through. You have a full 360 of the interior of a store, and we're going to just click on play. It gives me an intro video. It gives me information. I'll skip the intro video, and then we're into the game. We now have 28 seconds to find all of the things that are wrong here. So first, we're going to click on this empty area here, and it's telling me why right now, why this is wrong. So I got that right. Note the timer stopped while it's explaining it. This drawer should definitely not be open. Again, it's giving me that information. She is not doing anything there, she's hardly even looking. So you see I get a little progress down here. It's showing me what's happening. I continue to look around. I see this person waiting for the room here. Staff member still not helping her. Person walks out and they walk right in. Oh no, Shouldn't do that. So you have to look at actions and get those actions. Still looking around. This is my last one here. This should not be left out here, but I'm just going to let it time out all the way. If I get through the time, and you'll see that I actually didn't get them all. It timed me out, and then I would have to try it again. So that's the idea. They would have to go through and actually finish this before they could get through. So, all right. That's Fendi. So, but we're here to talk about ROI, not talk about the solution itself. So Fendi did an analysis. They rolled this out in September of 2019, and they used a metric that could easily be calculated. They used the retail thefts in their stores for the 6 months prior to rolling out the training and the 6 months after. That's actually very lucky if you look at those dates, because that went right till February 2020, and we all kind of know what happened after February 2020. So but what they found, in the difference in theft alone was 4 times what it cost to create the entire course of all 9 modules. So it's a 400% ROI on all 9 modules in only 6 months. So they definitely got their money's worth on that one. Very, very easily measurable return on investment. Okay, let's look at our second case study, CIS-CRP. CIS-CRP stands for Center for Information and Study on Clinical Research Participation. And what they do is run campaigns to help increase public clinical research literacy. They have an aware consortium that had planned about 25 events from 2020 through 2025. They were looking at reaching about 2 to 4 million people in total with all of their outreaches with clinical research education throughout the entire campaign, 5-year campaign. And this sounds great, except let's look at those dates, 2020 to 2025, and the fact that they were trying to put together large in-person events. That didn't happen. and I'm not even sure that this hashtag covers it anymore, because 2021 does not seem a whole lot different just yet. We're waiting, maybe it will be, but so far, more of the same. So it's really hard to put together any kind of in-person event these days. So time went on throughout 2020, and the date of their first event was getting closer and closer, and they were realizing that it was not going to happen in person. And so it was actually 5 weeks out from their event when they realized they just had to have a seismic shift in what they were planning to do. So they realized they had to have a rapid development tool. It was only 5 weeks. They could not do custom video production. They could not shoot the exhibit spaces. They couldn't even get into the exhibit spaces to shoot the exhibit spaces. And they had no budget for 3D CGI. They needed something that was robust, multi-platform, non-proprietary, and something they could just jump right into. So CIS-CRP chose a company called Illumina Interactive to help them create a virtual event. And they used Scenario VR to make that virtual experience. What they did was create a virtual exhibit hall, an expo, if you will. And normally each conference comes with an expo. And they put it on their website. So that's one of the features you can do with Scenario VR. You can actually publish it outside of Scenario VR and put it on your website if you want. The sign-up was simple. This is the sign-up form they had on their website. Fill in a few fields, first name, last name, email, get their information, and launch the scenario. They actually used that information to track the user's visit through their scenario. When you're published to HTML, as this was published to HTML in Scenario VR actually sends out lots of information on every click, everything they're doing, and they attach that all to that person's information there on the website. So they're able to actually track everything they did through the scenario. So they set it up with a series of stock 360 images. As I said, they couldn't get in and film the actual hall, but they used stock images from the inside of a building that certainly could have been a conference center. It kind of looks like a conference center. They used characters from the eLearning Brothers character library and created lots of interactivity, allowing the user to walk around the facility and view each representative of their booth, just like they would in a normal conference. They even added some background audio from a crowded conference hall to give it more realism. We'll look at it later. You won't hear the audio, but when you're in each room, you hear a little bit different sounds. So it actually, you get that feel of being in that conference. They had a map screen that could be brought up at any time to navigate around that showed you where you could go, as well as the offering the ability to walk room from room. So you can actually go through a door and go around the rooms that are in this conference center, virtual conference center, as it were. So much like an in-person conference expo, they had booths with sponsors. The sponsors were able to choose their color schemes, all of their information, obviously their logo, how it would be presented. Each booth had a setup for questions, handouts, PDFs, company's website, social media, all kinds of information. So here's an example of one of those question pages that would pop up when you chose the question icon. The answers would be given a variety of formats, such as video, audio, PDFs, and links to websites or other social media. They even added videos to some of the booths. So if the booth vendor had a video that they wanted to show, or multiple videos they wanted to show, 2D videos, those 2D videos could be embedded right into the materials and could bring up that information. They actually even had a theater, a movie theater. You could sit down and watch a set of informational movies. So the menu over here on the left was displayed, and you could pick all of the different movies that were in there and sit down for a while in your theater and watch a movie. So let's take a look at that. All right, here we are inside the virtual exhibit hall. I start with the background noise that I'm hearing, and they give me an intro, which I'm going to pause the intro. But you see it's a 360 virtual hall. I can look around, look at all the different things in here. All right, and if I want, I can go right to a room. So I'm gonna go click and go to this room. It's gonna bring me into that room. I then see some people in that room, and the booths pop up. And this is a booth for Greenfire, and I can go to their website, I can email them, I can click and get more information, I can look through their information that's in there, close that, I can ask them questions, or I can continue going to another room. So we'll bring up the exhibit hall map, we'll go into the Harbor Park room. So you can jump directly to rooms, or you can just browse through things. And so in this room, again, same sort of thing, we have two vendors in this room, lots of information in there. So you'll see we have Instagram, YouTube links, Facebook, so lots of things you can put in there. Information. This has a video directly into it as well. You can ask questions, same sort of thing. So lots of things you can do there. We can jump directly into the theater. So once you jump into the theater, you're seated in a theater. It's kind of a cool environment to sit in. There are a few people sitting around you, and you can watch videos on the theater and select between the videos on the side. So pretty cool. It gave you an interesting way to view a conference, since you couldn't go to a conference in person. Okay, so how did it go? Well, they got great feedback from polling, from both the booth sponsors and the attendees. I mean, this was early in the pandemic, really, but they really were able to do something they really didn't think they were going to do. They got a new format. It's they get told it was very innovative. Everyone really liked the going through the room and feeling the crowd and hearing the crowd. That really kind of helped. We all miss that kind of interpersonal interaction. So it gave you kind of a feel for it, even though it was really only on the web. But again, we are here to look at ROI. So how did it do money-wise? Well, their live events typically draw between 200 and 350 people. At their very first online expo, they had 350 attendees and 30 sponsors, so no downturn in attendance. But when they looked at their expenses versus what they got, they achieved a 40% cost reduction in expenses, planned expenses, in 2020 alone over the 4 events. So they created this entire thing and rolled it out for 4 events and saved 40% just on that year. So as they fill out the schedule year to year, which they're already doing right now, that cost savings will continue to grow because their expense is very low now to replicate that for each event. Just the different sponsors come in, they fill in the booths, the sponsors give them the information, very quick to do. So they're saving more and more as time goes on. At some point, they will likely get back to live events, I really hope. But the online expo is actually working so well that they're going to continue to provide it for those that want to attend only virtually. They're also having Zoom sessions at the booth, so you'll be able to speak to someone in the booth directly, a live person in the booth. So you can go to that booth if the vendor signs up for it and they want to man that booth. You can go to it, open it up, and speak to somebody directly at that booth. You can actually have groups at the booth. So that'll give kind of the full experience of an in-person conference expo hall. Okay, let's look at our third case study. So our third case study is Vanderbilt University. Within Vanderbilt, the School of Nursing has a history dating back to 1908, and it's ranked in the top 10 nursing schools in the United States. One of the big new trends in nursing is point of care ultrasound. It's really one of the most significant contributions to the practice of medicine in the 21st century. I've heard it described as the new stethoscope. It's an essential skill and it needs to be taught to all healthcare workers. Generally, the training is hybrid, meaning that it's classroom and hands-on instruction is required because you really have to get to know the machine. Just sitting in the classroom listening to it doesn't do it justice. So this presents quite a few challenges. First, it's the cost of the ultrasound machines themselves. They're around $85,000 each. And for training, they're used most at a 3 student to 1 instructor ratio at most. It's actually not ideal at that ratio, but you can do that. So to train a whole class, you'll need a lot of machines. And you'll need a lot of instructors as well. Imagine a class of 30 students, you need 10 instructors and a room to do that in. And don't forget, you'll actually need a model for each bed as well. Someone has to lie there and get scanned by the ultrasound while it's going on. So you can imagine scheduling all of these people and all this equipment at the same time becomes a nightmare. And imagine doing all this during a pandemic. So here's what a typical training station looks like. And as you can see, scaling this can be quite hard and expensive. You really can't add more students around each bed without detracting from their experience. Really, 1-to-1 is how you want to go. Here we've got 3-to-1, and not everybody's getting the right view. They're not able to see everything exactly as they should. So lots of challenges here. Number of trained faculty, logistics of getting everything together at the same time, allowing the students to observe the technique from a proper vantage point around the bed. All of this presents a challenge that needs a new solution. So Vanderbilt chose to go in a completely new direction. They chose VR because it gives them the opportunity to put the student right where they need to be in the environment. It gives them really a one-on-one setting with the instructor. They can also add in visual cues, things you can't even get in real life. So while they're observing the equipment, they can see what organs are placing things here. And also, repeatability is key to so that the student can do things over and over. And when they were limited on time, the student just didn't have time to do things over and over. With the VR case, we allow them to pause, and even rewind capability was put in so they could go back 10 seconds if they missed things. All that was put into the VR experience such that they could really get it and really repeat it over and over. So also, so many things are going on simultaneously during the training, and VR allows you to see them all and look at everything that's involved. So again, how did they do it? They actually captured 3 simultaneous videos of the clinician and patient. They had a 360 camera at the student's best point of view, which is directly across from the instructor. They also had a ceiling-mounted top-down camera that showed the detail of the patient and the positioning of the device. So when the nurse was putting the device in, you saw exactly where that was relative to the patient. It's actually a better view than the student would have gotten on their side of the bed. They also had a recording of the view on the ultrasound device itself. So they had a nice big close-up of that, so you saw exactly what it looks like on the ultrasound device, what it looks like from your point of view, and what it looks like from the top-down camera. They also added anatomical overlays on the patient as well, so the students could see where exactly these were relative to the scans being done. They then combined the 2D videos into the 360 video using Adobe Premiere and parsed that into shorter pieces that can be accessed via menu. So each area that they were going to do the ultrasound on would be its own little separate short piece that could be taken. You don't want to have somebody in VR generally for extended periods of time, hours of time. It can be a little troublesome. So you gave them short practice sessions they could go through. Each of these scenes was then loaded into Scenario VR, and each video became a scene. Once in Scenario VR, each scene was made interactive so the student could control their experience. They added those anatomical features that can actually be shown so the students can get a view of where those body parts are, and that's done via a menu right here. So we'll see that in a moment when we try it out. They then put it all together in Scenario VR and published it out. Students were able to take the course on a variety of devices, and they were given the choice to take it on whichever device they wanted to, the web, Google Cardboard, or Oculus Go. They had several Oculus Go's available for the students to use. The decision on what device to use to take the content on was left to the student. They could do it however they want or in multiple different ways to try to compare them. So let's take a look at that. All right, we have that right here. Okay, so here is the view. On this side, this is the view that's within the ultrasound machine. Over on this side, we have the top-down view. That's from the camera mounted at the top. And then, of course, the student's view is right across the bed from the instructor. So the first thing you do is you get a choice of what to select. In this case, we'll select right upper quadrant. That's going to be walking us through and looking at the video from the right upper quadrant. And you can see it's live now, and we're able to see what's going on there as she's moving her hand. It's synchronized with this, and the screen is synchronized as well, but there's nothing going on there. Let's go ahead and put it into anatomy mode. And I'm just going to throw up the kidney so we can see the kidney there, maybe the liver as well. And so you see where those are in placement to what they're doing. So when she actually goes in and we resume and play, you'll see, and so it gives us some information that's going on. As she's talking, I am hearing it in my headphone again, you're not hearing in yours. But so she's giving this information. First thing it does is prompt us, okay, where do I put the probe to look at that right quadrant? And so we look at there, and yep, I select right there, should be right next to liver right there. I cheated, gave myself the liver, so I knew where to put it. And you'll see once it goes in, the view comes up over here on the screen over here, because it's actually this screen over here, which you wouldn't see very well. This gives you a much better view of it right there. So as she goes in, you begin seeing the screen. It is the blow up of what's happened over here. And so you might be looking at that. Now, I'm sure that's very meaningful for some people, not very meaningful for me, but that is the view that they're looking for. So very cool stuff. At any time, the student can bop back out, click on the exit, go back out to the menu, and view another thing. They actually have a full introduction, setting up the device, lots of things that they can go through. So good information there. Okay, so let's talk about return on investment. So they actually solved all of the challenges they had with the previous methodology, and there were a lot of challenges. The students were able to practice virtually and then test out on the final machines, allowing them to purchase fewer ultrasound machines. They also didn't need to have as many staff or as many models to do the work. So to show the ROI, they looked at the cost over 5 years. But if you look in the first year alone, there's already an ROI in the first year. You save money in the first year. You put that year over year for 5 years, you end up with almost $600,000 in savings over 5 years running their nursing program. That is a huge amount for a university. So absolutely, return on investment by using VR. So I think you can see that immersive learning not only makes good sense from a training perspective, it also makes a great case for your ROI. So thanks for taking the time to listen today. And now we'll try and get to your questions.
Excellent. Thank you, John. This is great. We have a couple of questions. Is there a performance benefit for using Lectora with Scenario VR as opposed to, putting Scenario VR course inside of Captivate or Storyline?
So Lectora understands Scenario VR. They're friends. And so, yes, there is a benefit. So when you put a Scenario VR, there is a Scenario VR specific object within Lectora. When you drop Scenario VR in, Lectora knows when it's done. So you can use the OnDone command. If you're familiar with Lectora, you'll know what that means. That means it's a trigger, so you can get done. Also, the score will automatically be passed. So you'll get as soon as you drop that in, you get a variable for the score. So you can actually interoperate with that. And there are additional benefits as well. If you want to get even further into it, let's say you want to do things like tracking clicks, all of that information is passed out. You can put in a small web extension inside of, or HTML extension inside of Lectora, and that can actually get every click that you get inside of there, and you can act upon that too if you want. So you can get, things like all the things questions that they've answered inside of there and things like that. So you really can get deep into it. Now, that being said, it will go into Captivate. It will go into any articulator or anything you have out there, but it's always best in Lectora.
Sure.
I might be biased there.
That's the one we've tested it in the most.
Yes.
For the Vanderbilt course, which mode did students use the most? For example, Cardboard or Oculus, were they in headsets? Were they on desktop?
Excellent question. The one they used the most was the web, just because that was the most available. I believe they only had 5 Go headsets. And so it was hard to get to. And then when they, this also took place during the pandemic, and all 5 of those headsets got locked up inside of there and they couldn't get to them after that. So the web was used, most of the headsets were used quite a lot in the beginning before the pandemic, but then once the pandemic went, it was gone and it was all done via the web.
Sure, sure. We've talked about this in previous webinars, but is there any way to incorporate movement? If I'm in a headset, and can I take a step towards something, or am I stuck in a single space?
So Scenario VR uses 360 video and images as its base type. The media itself is 3DOF, what we call 3 degree of freedom. It's not 6 degree of freedom. So you can't move forward inside of that sphere. The camera you're getting that camera position. And so, yes, it is 3DOF rather than 6DOF. It will work just fine on 6DOF headsets, Quest 2, Pico Neo, that sort of thing. But it is the material itself is 3DOF, 3 degrees of freedom.
Awesome. Now we did talk about this in the past, where you can simulate that kind of movement by saying, I want to go over there, and if you click a button, it takes you to a new environment, and that way you can simulate that. But it's not like this person has described in their questions, where you're moving around inside of a single space.
Right. Yeah. You can.
Like the Quest.
What we really recommend doing for moving around is just putting a arrow or something and then just teleporting to that other area. When you actually move the camera, physically move things around, people get nauseous. And so you really don't want to do that. What you want is to have them stationary. The best course as far as not getting people nauseous is one where you're sitting in it. You can take it sitting in a chair and not have to move around, and you click and move and teleport. Even, I might be perhaps guilty of playing a few VR games, and there are ones that, if there's too much movement, even I get sick, and I spend lots of time in VR. So you want to be careful on movement that you put your person through.
Excellent. Okay, when it comes to creating and generating VR content, these examples that you've shared, that content was captured by the developer, right? Not by eLearning Brothers.
Correct.
So if we were going to build, we can build VR courses custom for you. That is something our custom team can do, and in that case, we would capture it for you. But if you're just interested in using Scenario VR as a development tool, can you talk to us, John, about where and how to capture that content? Is there a place where we can go buy content? Is there anything we should keep in mind as we are collecting that VR content, and of course 3D objects inside of Scenario VR as well?
Oh, absolutely. So yes, the good news is there's lots of content out there. The eLearning Brothers themselves, we have in our asset library, we have some 3D scenarios for you to use. You also have the Adobe stock library. So that's where, for instance, that the images that were taken for CIS CRP were taken. They just got them from the Adobe stock library. There are lots and lots of repositories out there of stock 360 images and videos. Videos are a little harder. Usually video, you'd want to record it yourself, but if you're going to just have a 360 image, tons of stuff out there. Check, Adobe stock, EOB themselves. 360 objects to put in. We have a library within Scenario VR. It's a relatively small library, about 100 different types of objects. But again, there are just so many libraries out there of objects. You're not going to fall short on those, and you'll be able to find those and put them in.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm not sure if we have this data. Like you said, back in February, things got a little bit weird with Vanderbilt. But do you know if there is a noticeable difference between effectiveness of courses when they're taken in a headset versus on a desktop?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure if they did the effectiveness. I know they did a separate, I'm not going to be able to give an exact statistic. I know that they did talk with some of the people about that. They were trying to do get as much information as they can, but I don't know if we got some number that we can share or things like that.
The data is skewed, being forced off of the videos anyway.
Yes.
So
yes, yeah.
I know that I remember courses that I take in the headset much better than I remember the courses that I take on the desktop. So take what you will from that. A question about 3D objects. So we've released 3D objects. You can manipulate 3D objects. If you're in a headset, you can manipulate them with your controls. If you're on the desktop, you can manipulate them with your mouse. But is it possible to use those 3D objects? Let's say you're operating a crane. So you have the two joysticks of the crane. Can you use those to operate and influence the world around you?
So absolutely, and they don't necessarily even need to be 3D objects to do that. So you can imagine if you just need two positions on that, you could actually have 2D objects. You have one in one position and one in the other position. When you select it, it switches. You just switch the visibility of the two objects, right? And you can have that do any. That can be a trigger to do anything. So and remember, selecting is however your medium is. So if it's on the web, it's clicking with the mouse. If you're in VR, it's clicking with the controller. If you're on your phone, it's actually touching with your finger. So all those can be done. You can do it with a 3D object. You can actually have an animation in a 3D object. So if you actually want to see that thing swing, a switch swing, you could have a switch with an animation that switches it back. You can then on that select, cause that animation to occur. Absolutely. It's a bit more complicated, but if you have that capability, that's a great way to do it.
Excellent. There's a question about deployment here. Some of the other VR tools out there look like they have very limited publishing options, like you can only publish to an LMS or something like that. Can you talk to us about the different publishing options for Scenario VR and how that may integrate into our learning ecosystem?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest features within Scenario VR is the variety of ways you can publish. So first is publishing within Scenario VR. So Scenario VR is an authoring tool, but it is also a hosting environment. You can almost think of it like a learning management system for VR itself. We have apps that run on all of the popular headsets. You can publish to Scenario VR and then have a Scenario VR app on there. It'll interoperate with it. You can assign it to a student. The student logs in on the headset. You assign that content to the student. The content will be downloaded to the headset. They can take it there, and we will track the results via XAPI on Scenario VR. That is just one way you can do it. We also have public publishing within Scenario VR, meaning if you want to put it out in the public, like I referred video interacted before, you can publish it and everyone can see it. You can link to it directly. No worries about people logging in, so you can do it that way as well. We also have many different ways to publish and take content off of Scenario VR. So you can publish to HTML5, you can publish to SCORM 1.2 and 2004, you can publish XAPI, you can publish to CMI5. These are all ways to publish, and we produce a zip file for you, and you can take it off the system. So for instance, CIS-CRP published to HTML5, they put it on their website because it's a completely encapsulated web VR system and will be running on their website without any additional help. It doesn't need to call home, it doesn't need to go anywhere. For SCORM, you can put it on your LMS. It'll track the score and the completion status on your LMS. Same thing with XAPI and CMI5. So these are all ways you can take it and put it just about anywhere you want to put it.
That's awesome. So it's a little more, well, it's much more versatile than the other VR tools out there.
Absolutely.
Great. Does Scenario VR work with Unity or Unreal Engine?
I'm not sure the question. So the Scenario VR app underneath the covers on the headsets is written in Unity. But asking if it works with, does it somehow integrate with? It's not an integrate. So we create what's Scenario VR, when you publish out, it actually just creates all of your information, and then it creates like a script, a runtime script. And then we have interpreters of that for each thing. Now the interpreters on the headset are written in Unity. So it's not, you can't integrate it with I'm not sure the question exactly, but you can't integrate it with a Unity project if you're building something in Unity, but it is written in Unity itself.
Sure. I think that was the question. Can I integrate it with a Unity project? So it sounds like that answer is no, but it's using Unity. Okay. Someone is here looking at Scenario VR and they're wanting to know about the registered viewer limits. Does that's mentioned in the pricing packages? Is that just when you host the published project, or what are those limits?
Sure. So when you get a license of Scenario VR or a platinum license of the ELB suite, you get a single author with that license, and we get what we call 250 registered users. Those would be users on the Scenario VR system. That means that one publishing option we talked about, which is publishing it on Scenario VR using Scenario VR as an LMS, that's where those users will come in. Now you get 250 users. That means not only will they'll be able to log on the headsets, We'll also be able to track their information. You'll get analytics, lots of results on them for 250 users. You can purchase more if you want to do it that way, but that does not count against when you put it on your LMS and any of those other publishing options. Taking it off the system, that's unlimited. You put it wherever you want for as many people as you want.
Is that 250 specific users or 250 users on at one time?
Specific named users, because we track we track against those users' analytics and store their analytics for you. So 250 named users.
For it being an all, yeah, for the LMS style reporting directly out of there.
Correct.
If I were to create a course, is there a time limit on my public publishing? Do I need a current license for content to live there? Can it live there indefinitely? If I publish a course, publicly, and then my account expires, will that course come down?
That is correct. It comes down. So yes, as long as you maintain a license, anything you put on public stays in public. If you remove your license, it comes down off of public.
All right, great. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, John. This has been a great presentation, and we'll see you guys all next time.